Just a reminder, this is part 2 of my conversation with Matthew Newton. If you haven't listened to part 1, make sure you listen to that one first. Or not. I mean, it's your choice, right? Either way, it's time to get on with the show. So let's get to it. Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. Join me for some honest, unscripted discussions with other CRNAs who are transforming their financial lives. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today. And now, on with the show.
Coronavirus happened, and I watched my 401k, which was a sure thing. I watched my stocks that I've always been very careful buying drop by 50% plus. And that was a very scary scenario. Me and my wife kind of sat there and went, guys, like, this is what we're going to be, retiring on. What if something like this were to happen when it's time for us to retire? That's a very scary thing when you've worked your whole life and you're like, everything is so, it can just be changed by just a little thing. And so we're like, we need to be better diversified. And, so the moment coronavirus was out, I had a little bit of time at home to where I was like, well, I'm going to do this now. So I'm going to do this real estate. So I dusted off all those real estate books that I planned on reading. And I sat down for about 3 weeks straight. And I think I read through like 4 books probably. I had a pen and paper. I took notes just like it was homework. And I said, I'm gonna figure out why everyone keeps saying that this is such a great idea. When I go to the gym, I'd have my real estate podcasts in. I would listen to what everybody else was doing. Their successes, their failures are just as valuable as the successes. And I would try to remember this. And then I said, okay, well, I have a plan. Me and my wife talked about it. She liked the plan. We agreed on it. And I said, okay, well, I verbalized my goal. I said, you know what, by the end of this year, I'm like, I want to own at least 1 rental. And she said, okay. So then what I did was I started networking with people, and I found a fantastic real estate agent in North Carolina. No, not going to name drop here, but her name's Vivian Wilburn. She's amazing. If anyone's looking for a good real estate agent, I highly, highly recommend her. And I went to her and I said, look, I'm getting into this. I want to do some real estate investing. I'm looking for long-term generational wealth. Here's kind of my business plan. I made some spreadsheets that said, okay, here's the money I'm putting in. Here's my return on investment. Here's all the liabilities. Here's all the benefits. And I talked to her about it. And she said, I think that's a great plan. I told her, I'm like, you have a sale, just find me the right place. And she said, absolutely. And then it took like a month or two. Me and her looked at countless places. And it was wonderful because she was a real advocate for me and what me and my wife were trying to do. We would walk into places and she would just go, no, we're done here. Let's go.
Yeah.
And
wow.
I mean, yeah. So for a real estate agent to not just push for a sale,
mm-hmm.
she knows she has it, she took her time and she was methodical, and she found me a wonderful first rental property. And, I remember the first one we tried to buy, she went, Matt, this is what you need to do. This is what I think it's going to go for. Here's my best advice. And me being cheap was like, yeah. And I made the offer that I wanted to make. And sure enough, if I didn't lose, I got outbid like that. So I went, yep, I'm just going to listen to everything she says. So on the next one she found me, which was amazing. She said, this is what I think you need to do. And I did exactly what she said. And, we had a sale, the deal went through, and I said, okay, well, now I have this rental property. Mm-hmm. What do I do?
Yeah.
So, and all the books I'm going through my checklist of my notes I took. And I'm like, okay, so this is step A was get a property and buy it. What was great was she protected me from myself, because I acknowledge, I'm like, you're the expert, you're my people. So talk to me like I don't know anything, because I don't,
Yeah.
and I think that humility goes a million miles. So she said, well, Matt, do you want to manage it yourself? And I was like, no, I don't. I don't want any more phone calls at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, do you have any recommendations? She said, absolutely. So she recommended Liz White, who's also based in Winston, if anyone's looking for a good property manager. She's like, go with LCW Management. They're really good people. They really look out for their clients. So I called up Liz, and Liz said, oh, what a fantastic property. I manage a couple in the area. She's like, here's what I think you can get for rent. Here's what I think you should do. This is how I want to market it. What do you think? And I, trying to be humble, because like you said, humility is a million miles. I was like, you know what? You do what's best for this property. What's going to get me my return? What's going to get me from point A to point B? And I remember the rent that I actually wanted to charge. She was like, okay. And she ended up charging more. And and just the bump in rent that she charged, that she got immediately, like more than enough to even pay for her. And I was like, wow, like, this is great. Like, and it's been really simple. I mean, knock on wood. Like, it's been a very simple process. So like for me personally, I realize my strengths and weaknesses. I'm not a handy person. You want to see something get messed up, give me a hammer and nails. So I try to buy slightly newer places, and I get a good inspection, and I trust in my people. So whenever there's an issue, I call up Liz or Vivian, and I'm like, hey, do you guys have any recommendations for contractors or something like that? And they, they'll take care of it. It's been too simple and too easy of a process. But I think it's not because of me, not because I'm smart and I'm good at this. I think it's because I have a really good team of people that I just trust.
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot to be said for the education, the self-education that you embarked upon in the beginning. You learned enough to be able to speak the language, to be able to talk with people, and to verbalize exactly what it was you were looking for. And then you sought out experts in that field, and then you deferred to their expertise, which is something that I think, a lot of people in today's society have trouble doing. Like a lot of people either, well, I can do it just as well as them, and I'm going to save a few bucks along the way. Or, and that ends up, a lot of times in disaster. Or, you end up not trusting your education and not trusting the expertise of others. And then you're stuck in analysis paralysis, in that phase for a very long time, and you end up not doing anything. And so, now I do want to move on to your idea of diversification, because you have this rental home. What other kinds of investments have you gotten into in the last few years?
So my goal has been to buy one rental home a year, if not two. So, and it's actually really good. So I've talked to my two people, my team, and said, hey guys, pretty much every February, March, April, I'm like, I really would like to buy something, because in the market I'm in, I like to rent to doctors and nurses that are coming in for the big hospitals nearby. And July is, resident month. So like Q1 of every year, I start getting emails and texts from my guys and saying, hey, here's some good properties that kind of fit what you're looking for. Let me know if you're interested. And we go from there. And we've done this since, I started, and I mean, we're about to close on my third property, which is great. And they've all been really good. I mean, a hiccup or two along the way, but I have a phenomenal property manager, so she just handles everything for me. I mean, like I said, I have no complaints, and they made it really, really simple. Especially having people that work with you that are advocates for you, which is really good. So from there, right now me and my wife are looking at starting a VRBO. So I'm in the analysis phase of mountain homes. So we're looking at the Blue Ridge market. It's a fantastic market. So I'm putting together my pro formas right now for that, and trying to make the numbers work and see where we go. So I'm hopefully by the end of the year we might have something along those lines. And it's a new area for me to get in. The long-term rentals are great. I love the long-term rentals. They are slam dunks. I mean, like I hate to say they're easy mailbox money, but they're easy mailbox money for the most part. As long as you get a good deal and you pick a good one, and you get people in there. I mean, they're pretty solid. So the VRBO is the new exciting area I'm trying to work to get into. As far as diversification goes, So, you have your 401k, you have your stock account. I like my real estate. I have so much fun with the real estate, honestly. Like, to me, nothing is more satisfying than putting together a plan, doing the research, executing it, and going, did it work? Didn't it work? What can I do? How can I tweak it? I'm a giant dork because of that. So, my wife and I also dabble in cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Which is kind of all over the place right now, especially. But in my humble opinion, I think it's a good bet especially for a couple of years down the road. I do a lot of research on that, and I guess I know as much as anybody can know when it comes to the cryptocurrency space. But we do that. I also work with a private equity company to where like building, like investing in hotels, storage units, things like that. And these have all been really great things, and each one has its own risk profile, but each one is kind of a separate market that's not too much affected by one another. So if maybe we have another coronavirus pandemic, my stock account might get hit, but my long-term rentals are fine. Or if something were to happen with in the hotel space, my 401k might be fine, my long-term rentals will be fine. So like it allows the ebb and flow. Even with my VRBO, the way I'm planning my numbers, of course I want them to cash flow. But even with my VRBO, I'm working it to where whatever my mortgage and my running expenses will be covered by my rental properties. If something were to happen to like the vacation rental market, or heaven forbid they rezoned or something crazy like that happened. So is anything 100%? No, but I'm trying to make it to where each thing is as safe as possible.
Yeah, well, and that kind of echoes my thoughts on diversification, because you want asset classes that are not correlated with one another, that have their own risk profiles. Specifically commercial real estate. If you look at commercial real estate versus the stock market, the Sharpe ratio is much different, because there's pretty much half the amount of risk for the amount of reward that you get when it comes to commercial real estate versus the stock market. And that doesn't mean that the stock market is not great. I mean, I advocate for having about 30 to 40% of your portfolio in the stock market at any given time. But I have half of my portfolio in real estate, just for those reasons that you talked about. And then I dabble in cryptocurrency as well. And so, some other, interest producing investments, but yeah, and I think this is part of why we've enjoyed our conversations in the past, because we do think about things kind of, the same way. But, now getting back to risk tolerance, because you did make a mention of that, you've taken a lot of action. What has helped you to determine your risk tolerance for these different investments along the way? And how has that shaped the moves that you've actually made versus perhaps some actions that you didn't take?
So my big thing is I'm a big reader. I'm a big listener. I try to network as much as possible. So like one of the first things I did when I decided to get into real estate was I found a buddy that does real estate and does it very well. And I said, hey, let me just come shadow you. Let me ask you some dumb questions. Let me tell me your biggest failures, please. Tell me what's going to bite me in the butt. What's your exact market you're in? How do you do what you do? I'm a huge advocate of networking, talking to anybody and everybody. Like me personally, if anybody watches this and is inspired, call me, send me emails. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to give you my humble opinion or put you in contact with the people that I work with. Like life is all about who you know and being around good people. One of the big hurdles when it comes to risk is not. It's interesting because sure, the housing market could crash. Sure, the crypto market could crash again and again and again. Sure, like there's always risk. One of the biggest things that I've kind of run into, which has been challenging, and now it rolls off my back like water, but a lot of people don't necessarily always support what you're doing. I remember when I started my anesthesia company, I had people going, you're just going to fail. What are you doing trying to leave the hospital? What are you, you're just going to be back here. I had a lot of people tell me that kind of stuff. I had a lot of people tell me when I was buying houses, the market's going to crash. Don't do this. Let me tell you my one horror story. This is why you shouldn't do it. Oh my God, you're investing in crypto. Oh, and it was like all these, I hate to say, it's hard to find positive people out there that want to prop you up.
Yeah.
When you find that group of people, when you find that person, like latch on to them, learn what you can, because like I said, for every, one or two positive people, there's like 4 or 5 negative people. And maybe it's because they feel like they should have acted, or maybe they're just afraid, or maybe they're stuck in that analysis paralysis. A good indication here. So when I was getting ready to buy, I'm in the process of buying this new townhome, right? And perfect timing, getting ready for the residence. Everything looks great. I got a wonderful deal on it because of my amazing realtor. But I can't tell you, I had 3 or 4 people go, the market's going to crash. Oh my gosh, there's going to be a 50% correction. And maybe they're right. But, because like right now, like the way our economy is going with inflation kind of 8-9% now, who knows? But nobody has a crystal ball. And if you did, I mean, everybody would be looking into it. So I remember back when coronavirus first happened, I said, do I want to get into this? Because we could have a housing market crash like 2008, and that's a scary thing. And I remember going, well, my philosophy was, I would hate to be wrong and there not be a crash and me have just missed out on a great deal. Because, interest rates, I mean, they're giving away free money essentially with the interest rates at the time. So I said, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to make the best plan. And if I fail, so be it. It's a lesson. And if I don't, great, I'm going to keep it going. And you know what? And am I glad that I didn't just wait, because that would have been 2.5, 3 years of deals and profit and equity and all this stuff I would have been missing out on because I was afraid to act.
Well, there's not a whole lot of discussion about opportunity cost, and I mean, the old adage about real estate holds true, where, you don't wait to buy real estate and wait. And that is something, I mean, people have been talking about the housing market being overblown for the past 6, 7, 8 years. The market's too high. Well, the truth of it is that we have a housing shortage in our country. We don't have enough new construction to keep up with the housing needs. So what happens? Supply and demand, basic economics, like prices of homes are going to continue to rise until that problem is taken care of. And that problem is not slated to be taken care of anytime soon. And normally when it comes to housing markets, there, a couple of years, when you talk about a housing crash, it's normally more of a slow burn, and it happens a couple of years after, a stock market recession happens. Now, of course, 2008 was different because it was problems with real estate that caused that recession. But in general, when you're talking about a stock market recession, it takes a couple of years to trickle down to the housing markets. And even then, you as long as you're buying properties that are actively cash flowing positively, then what does it matter? Like, you're still making money off of it. So some people use that excuse of, well, I'm just waiting for bigger profits. Well, small profits are better than no profits.
Absolutely. So, I completely agree. And my thing is, like, my risk profile for this is, well, what if the housing market does crash? Well, I'm not planning on selling my properties. Like, if I have to and something happens, okay. But honestly, like, that you have things like stepped up basis for leaving wealth to your kids. I plan on dying holding my properties or upgrading them and letting it get passed on to my son tax-free. That's my plan.
Yeah.
Whether it happens or not, but like, that's my goal. So like, okay, the housing market crashes, I lose 10%, I lose 70% of the value. Well, hopefully I'm not going to kick the bucket for another, 50 years.
Yeah.
I imagine the housing market will recover in that time. So like I said, I'm not planning on selling. So I'm like, okay, well, worst case scenario, as long as I can keep a renter in there, and the expense on these places it's not incredible. So even if I had to carry it or put a renter in there at a slight loss, that's still fine. Like, it's still not the end of the world.
Yeah.
So like to me, like, being able to take that wealth and pass it down is an amazing thing. Like, I would love that. Like, nothing would be better than for me to be able to give my children like a leg up in life, because mom and dad made a couple sacrifices while, they were alive.
Yeah. Well, and that's, in our family, we've taken money and set it aside. We put it into apartment syndications in markets that we feel like are going to turn over pretty quickly. And that's what we're using for our kids' education. We're using, that because of the risk profile of these apartment syndications, it works out really great for trying to expand that pot of money in a safe fashion. So we're having some success with that already. And, our oldest daughter is, 7 years away from starting college. So, it's something where we've got some time there, but this is a fund for all of our kids too, but you can use it, different investments for different things, and you can get really creative with this stuff. And I love that you have not put boundaries on yourself with regards to that. Like you'll look at any deal, you'll look at anything. I mean, I'd love to hear more actually about the hotel offering that you got into. If we could take a minute to just talk about the underlying strategy there, of this offering.
So the hotel offering was interesting. So I found a pretty good private equity group that I worked with, and I know them through some family friends, and I wanted to find something new that I haven't done. And me and my wife, because it's like to me the safest things that you can do is real estate in your 401k. And of course, with any private equity, there's always a little bit more risk, I guess, involved. But to me, the risk reward profile is pretty great, because what do most private equity companies do? They find something, they build it, they run it really, really well, and then somebody else comes in and buys it. And then you typically, not only are you getting paid dividends in the process with your mailbox money, then typically you get a 2, 3, 10% return, or 10 times return on what your initial investment was. Is it a risk? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But, to me, I'm like, well, I'm at a point in life right now to where I'm young. So if something were to happen, I could definitely take that risk, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, so
yeah.
So I found a good group. You vet them really well, and you kind of look at their business plans. And we liked it, and so we invested with this group, and so far everything's been pretty great, I got to say. The other good thing is, with all this diversification that you do, when it comes to depending on what kind of private equity you're doing, when it comes to like hotel investing, when it comes to just having rentals, when it comes to all this stuff, you also get depreciation and a lot of tax benefits that can in turn be turned around and used for your companies, your LLCs, and your personal taxes. And to me, that's worth its weight in gold. A lot of people don't like it. Everyone's like, taxes are an interesting topic. I'm actually reading right now. I'm reading a book on taxes right now. And it's funny, my wife looks at me and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that's so dry." But finding good ways to save on taxes is a great thing. That's why I talk to people about LLCs, about depreciation of homes, about different ways to kind of turn everything in and maybe help you out. Because if you really think about it, a large portion of all of your earned income is spent on taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and so let's dive a little deeper here, because this was something that I wanted to touch on a little bit. How do you utilize your LLCs for tax purposes and business expenses? What are some examples that you've done in the past, or that you plan to do in the future that really help you out from a tax perspective when talking about your LLCs? Because right now you work for a company, right? Do you have your own LLC still on the side?
So I have a real estate LLC.
Okay.
And you can go online. I used to have more, but I've since tried to make things a lot simpler as I've gotten into more family mode. Mm-hmm. In 5 years down the line, when I'm done having kids and they're a little older, I'll probably make it all nice and complicated again. But I try to pare it down for the time being, because it's a lot on the side. But creating an LLC, for starters, takes 10 minutes, like $100 or so. Getting an EIN number, 5 minutes. Getting a bank account, 5 minutes. So people, the first thing they do is when they say LLC, they go, "Oh my God, it's just, I don't have the hours in the day. It takes 15 minutes, so be quiet."
It's not long.
So I'm like, you can, and then there's companies that'll do it for you and all that, but it's so simple. So LLCs, they're a good way, for one, to protect yourself, which is what I really like. So everybody will give you a different opinion on real estate and LLCs. My personal opinion, a good lawyer, if something happens, can get through any LLC and sue you, but it just adds one extra layer of protection. Maybe it's just my comfort blanket that I cling on to, but I've seen a lot of very good logic behind them, and I buy into it. So if something were to happen on one of my properties, they're not suing Matthew. They're going to be they're going to typically sue the LLC first because where's there more money? It's going to be in the multiple properties that I hold in an LLC versus me.
Yeah.
Will they eventually try to get to me? Probably, but you know what? Whatever. At least they're not going to be able to come from my personal assets or my personal house. So I like that. The other big thing is you touched on it earlier. Where you're like trying to save a buck. Well, I talk to a lot of CRNAs and a lot of people in general. They're like, "Oh, I do my own taxes," and I'm like, "Oh, stop that! Like, don't do that! Like, what a terrible idea! Why would you do your own taxes when there are people that go to school for this and it's their job to know everything?" TurboTax is wonderful, I guess, but every time I've done my own taxes, I miss out on so much. So, what I typically do is I keep very good books with my rentals, with any capital gains I receive, any of the mailbox monies. I keep very, very good books. I have a wonderful Excel spreadsheet, and at the end of the year, I have a good CPA. I vetted them. They work with people like me. I've talked to people, so everything's worked out really well. And I go to them and I say, here's everything I have. And I kind of throw spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. I'm like, here's this one deduction. And she's like, no. And I'm like, here's this one deduction. She's like, no. But for every 10 things I throw at her that I try to deduct or I try to do, she'll say yes to one. And hey, you know what? That one just saved me $1,000. Or and it's these little things where I have a good conversation with her, or I pay quarterly taxes, which really helps at the end of the year to not get a giant tax bill, things like that. But you pay your people well. They do your taxes for you, and they really help you out. Like I said, so I read books on taxes, so I go, oh, okay, I can do that. There's the Augusta rule for Georgia, or there's a tax movie credit in certain states, or there's other things that you can do that you just don't know about unless you talk to people and read on it. It's one of the most the beneficial things I do is I work with these doctors all day long, and these surgeons and all that make a buck or two more than the typical person, and I'll say, hey, what do you do with your money? And they kind of look at you, and 50% of the time they'll go, oh, I invest with this syndication. I work with this equity group. A lot of the doctors I work with do a lot of hotel investing, like with equity groups. They do a lot of storage units. They do a lot of crypto. And they'll sit there, and every now and then you'll get them to open up, and they'll just talk about it. And you're like, these are really great ideas. I mean, even this last year, I had one of the doctors say to me, oh, well, hey, there's a Georgia film movie credit that'll save you 10% on this. And it was like, that's a fantastic idea. And you take it to your CPA and you say, hey, does this work for me? And they say yes or no.
Yeah.
So I always say, I network galore, and I surround myself with good people. And, you get all these information from people, you get all this great information that you wouldn't get elsewhere. Because, unfortunately, financial literacy is not taught in schools. It's interesting, all the things that they teach you in school, like, hey, how many times have you used an imaginary number in real life? You know what I mean? Like, all these things that sometimes don't necessarily translate. Like, I would love to have a class on balancing a checkbook, or these basic things taught in high school.
And even just talking about finance in general is considered to be taboo. You don't talk about what you make. You don't, and my wife, she works for the school system here. Her salary is public knowledge. And they had somebody coming in to talk to them, to have this presentation. And the person, the guy told them, you can't talk about your salaries. You'll get fired if you talk about your salaries. And they were like, no, we won't. It's public record. Like we can talk about it all we want to. We're not in the private, sector. And the guy was like, oh, well, I guess that's just how it was where I'm used to being in the private sector, and that's how it is. And it's like, why in the world is it that way? Why is it a fireable offense to talk about what we make and what we do with our money? It's, you don't get to the bottom of the root of the problems without talking about it. And so many people are mismanaging their money, and we just kind of gloss over it.
Yeah, it's the truth. Like I said, it's these things like, just talk to people. Like I cannot tell you how many times I've been like, I don't know. Let me make a phone call, and I'll call my property manager, or I'll call my realtor. I'll call one of my buddies that's in some of the same spaces as me, and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Can I do this? What do you think? Blah blah blah. And they'll say yes, no, and then I'll go do some more research on it to see. Like I said, life's all about who you know and who you talk to. And like, to me, honestly, I always tell people, it's the same in the OR. I remember I said, one of my students asked me something one time. And I was like, I don't know. And they kind of looked at me like, you're the all-knowing CRNA. You don't know. And I'm like, that's what keeps you safe, is you be humble. And I don't care if you think I'm an idiot. I don't care if the anesthesiologist, the surgeon thinks I'm a moron. I want to do what's best and what's safe for my patients. So if I don't know something, I'm going to admit it. I'm going to know my limitations. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to figure it out. But you don't just jump blindly on things. The same thing goes with business. Same thing goes with finance. Advice from people that have lived it is so valuable.
For sure. Well, and you've mentioned that you love to read. You've read a lot of books and listened to a lot of podcasts. Do you have some recommendations for the audience about, some of these books and podcasts that have helped to shape your mindset around life and investing?
Oh man, I have a ton of them. Get your pen. So interestingly enough, one of my good conversations with one of my old business partners, we would always talk about what we're reading. And I had some good recommendations. He had some very good recommendations, and we would always go back and forth and kind of trade books. So the first book I advise to anybody, I don't care who you are, is the Tried and True Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's a great way to figure out what's an asset versus what's a liability. It's Robert Kiyosaki. It's a really great book. It's written in crayon. It's a super simple finance book, and it's entertaining. It's a great book to just go, okay, I was thinking about money wrong, because I was. And it's not embarrassed to say, like, I was going, oh man, my car is a great asset. And no.
Well, okay. So I got to interject here though, because I actually, Rich Dad Poor Dad, for me, I felt like it was a scam. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah. I mean, the idea of just going out and using other people's money for stuff. Now I know that it's not. And so I have since learned that it's, but he kind of comes across as a bit of a greasy salesman. However,
I can see that.
Cashflow Quadrant is the one for me that completely changed my mindset about how to look at your income streams. So I'll go ahead and put a plug in for that one, but I'll let you continue with yours.
Cashflow Quadrant was another one I was recommending. I like that one. That one's really good.
Yeah.
But like my thing is, like, it's the big way of just, how do you look at finances? And I always say, you're either a Dave Ramsey or a Robert Kiyosaki person. You're never both. I like using other people's money to buy things, especially when money is cheap. My opinion may be changing soon now that interest rates are up through the roof. So Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cashflow Quadrant. Another one that's really great, I loved, is Extreme Ownership. I think it's by Jocko Willink. It's a fantastic book, especially if you like war stories. It's a Navy SEAL who talks about his time in Iraq and running a team of Navy SEALs. And he talks about the things that worked, the things that didn't work in his war stories, which is great. And then after every story, he relates it to running a business and managing teams. A fantastic, aside from it being entertaining, great book on just how do you take accountability. I'm a big proponent of don't be a victim. If the people that say, oh my God, I can't, because, like, life happens to everybody. And sure, some people maybe have it better than others, but there's always a way to succeed. You just have to figure it out. So stop saying I can't because, and find a way that you can. Find that person that can help you. Find that program, that institution, that thing that can help you get out of the spot you're in and get to the point you want to get into. The good thing about Extreme Ownership, that book, before I read that, I used to be I failed. It's Bobby's fault. What did you I used to be that guy. And finally I realized, no, the problem's me. And if I'm letting everybody else affect me, why would I let everybody else control my life? If I have a team that's failing me, I need to fix the team. I need to replace the team. I need to do something. If I have my own personal issue, that's why am I letting myself fail myself? It's a great way to take ownership. I mean, like the name says. The other good one I really like, if you're looking to get into real estate, is it's actually it's on the Rich Dad Poor Dad reading list. It's called Loopholes in Real Estate by a guy named Sutton. Fantastic book. Talks about all these different ways sectors in real estate, different things that you can use to benefit yourself tax-wise, ways to make good cash flow, ways to see appreciation. That's another good one, just to get a good intro into, I think I want to do real estate. Let me test the waters and see. Fantastic book. Another one I like, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's just a classic.
Yeah.
It teaches you responsibility and things that you can do to just improve your life. And then probably my last one, I always recommend people for the business world, or just, talking to your friends and family, is Never Split the Difference. It's written by Chris Voss. Loved it. He's a negotiator, everything from terrorists to domestic issues. And he tells he tells his stories from his time working, and then he relates it to how does it apply to real life.
Yeah.
Great book, very interesting. I mean, just as a way to to navigate, to talk. How do you have cordial disagreements with people? Maybe, maybe family members, maybe the opposite political party, maybe whatever. How do you have okay, here's what I hear you're saying. This is what I think. It's a good structure to how to have conversation, and a good way to try to get results, which I love. Never Split the Difference. Cool. These are all fantastic books that I always recommend to people. Entertaining and very useful.
Very cool. Well, this has been awesome, man. I feel like you've given us a ton of nuggets, and you've got a lot of earned knowledge that you've gotten along the way. So I want to thank you for being here. I do want to give people a chance to get a hold of you. So how can they do that?
I guess you'll have it in the notes for this, but you can email me at matthew.newton711@gmail.com. So matthew.newton711@gmail.com. Email me with any questions, but anything we've had, I work in Georgia, but I manage CRNAs all over the U.S. So if you're a CRNA looking for any kind of travel work, if you are looking to get into real estate, if you're looking to even just ask me questions about cryptocurrency, or you want to hear some stories about all the things I've done right and wrong, I'm always happy to share them. So reach out, and I'm always happy to help. Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks again for being here today. This has been great, and I hope everybody's enjoyed it just as much as I have. So. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Matthew just keeps coming with the hits. I love the mindset he displayed when he said, if you're not failing, you're not trying. Life is full of risk, and we're going to fail sometimes. But these failures are an opportunity for growth and education. I mean, you wouldn't think to admonish a 1-year-old for falling over while trying to walk, but we are so quick to do that to ourselves when we make a mistake. But if you're not making mistakes, then you're not learning and growing. He also mentioned that he holds a State of the Union with his spouse at least once or twice a year. I appreciate this concept, and I feel financial transparency is important in any marriage. This also speaks to the intentionality that he has with his finances. Money is a tool for freedom. It allows Matthew to spend more time with his family, which is his ultimate goal. I challenge you guys to figure out what it is that makes you tick. What is it that drives you? How can you use the tools at your own disposal to find more freedom in your own life? As for this episode, though, that's a wrap. If you'd like to reach out to Matthew, make sure you check out the show notes for his information. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with a friend and give us a 5-star review on your podcast player. If you're interested in gaining access to passive income opportunities through real estate, make sure you visit my website at www.oncallinvestments.com or hit me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.